Welcome to the Dirty Mind Podcast. My name is Dirt, and this is the Dirty Mind Podcast. Today we're talking about cold games, not just the types of games that have been sitting out in the outside world and it's below freezing, so they've sort of chilled over and they have that freezer burnt look to it, but I'm talking about games where they actually have cold levels. Maybe the whole game is set in the winter times, or maybe it's just got a few little missions here and there that are real chilly. But either way, there's something about it that I really like, and I wanted to get into that today. But first, it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Old News. I got nothing new for you. Get ready, fans of that crazy out-of-nowhere game called Assassin's Creed, because that game is getting a sequel. That's right, Ubisoft is making a sequel to Assassin's Creed, and it's coming out November 2009. It's going to be called, get this, Assassin's Creed 2, because it's the second game. And it's going to be taking place in 15th century Italy. How crazy is that? And I assume it's got to be a different character. We don't know a whole lot of information about it, but you're probably going to be playing as a completely different person. So be on the lookout for that game because it's apparently a different game. You can call the game a different name and it's still sort of the same, but it's a different game technically. So they call it Assassin's Creed 2. It's still got the same root words, Assassin's Creed, from the first game. But then they added the number at the end. Now, it also might be a little confusing because I think they're going with Roman numerals, which also is doubly confusing because it takes place in Italy. And Roman, that's different than Italy, right? So these numbers, they sort of look different, but if you just count the vertical columns, that is your clue as to the quantity. So you got the one column, and then you got the second column, and that second one, that puts you over the edge, and that tells you, okay, this is 2. That's the number 2. So Assassin's Creed 2, look out for it. The second, third, fourth quarter of 2009. It's gonna be a video game. Look out for that. So, cold games. What is it, Dirt? What is it about cold games that you enjoy? I'm so glad that you asked that question. So I was playing a game that I did not expect to have some chill, and that was Battlefield 6. So in the recent update, there have been a complete revamps of some maps where it's a winter time, a winter chill, a winter blanket has swept through and covered the landscape. And this was something that I liked immediately because it reminded me of Battlefield Bad Company 2 back in the day. And there were a lot of nice winter-themed maps and levels in that game. And it also just made me think about all the other games that I like that are winter-themed or cold in some way, shape, or form. And then it made me think, why? Why do I like that? What is it about that I enjoy? Because you would think I would be more partial to, I don't know, something that's super muddy like MotorStorm, and which I obviously am. But then you have things like tropical rainforests and such, where it's just beautiful, serene landscapes. So why wouldn't I be partial to those situations? Because I love going there if I ever have the opportunity. I like going to places where it's nice and warm, personally, but not too warm. I need to be able to cool off somehow. But I think what I enjoy about the cold levels and cold games is that winter itself, snow itself, is beautiful, but I don't love being cold. So in a video game, I have the opportunity to see all of the beautiful sights of cold regions without having the repercussions of having to feel what it's like being in those cold regions. And there's another element that is really nice for developers and designers, where you have this sort of built-in mechanic just waiting for you to utilize. So in Battlefield 6, the most recent example of this, you have this cold, a lethal chill coming in. So it's got to be real freezing down there. I don't know the actual temperature because I don't think they have any sort of thermometers on display. But if you stay out in the cold for long enough, it will start to take away your health. It'll start tapping away at it, hammering it, chiseling it away. And that's no good because there's already plenty of lethal stuff going on with bullets flying everywhere. Someone threw a chair at me. There's a lot of stuff you would like to avoid. And when you have this chill happening, this coldness, that's just one more level that you have to worry about. But everyone else has to worry about it as well. So that's kind of nice. You have that unification, that brotherhood. Everyone has to deal with the same thing, and that's nice. But the mechanic that I mentioned earlier was you have to get towards some heat sources, and most of that is just barrels of fire, just fire barrels, which, I think a lot of this stuff takes place in New York City. So that's if Hollywood movies are to be believed at all. I feel like there's a lot of barrels that are just constantly on fire in New York City. Like that's just a thing on every other corner. You'll see a real tall barrel and it's just got a blazing fire. And there are at least 3 people huddled around and they have fingerless gloves and they're warming all of their extremities by the fire. So that's pretty cool. That's nice and realistic. And I think the thing about it it could go either way. A lot of players, I'm sure, are not a big fan of that because it's just something that it doesn't even have anything to do with war, with battle. And that's the name of the game, literally. It's battle something. It's battle. What's it called? Battle grass, battle lawn, battle hill, something like that. 6, I remember that. And even though it's not related to battle stuff, I think it's a nice little strategy, a little hook, a little twist on the usual situations. And I like that. I like when they try something different because that's kind of bold a little bit, I'm sure there was some designers or developers who are sitting in that meeting and like, ooh, I don't know, that's weird, right? Why are we gonna make the players feel super cold? No one likes being cold. And then someone else said, well, no one likes being shot at either, but we do that a lot, don't we? And they're like, okay, I concede my point. Good job, Charles. That's, you're great. You're great at debating. Good job, Charles. You're the only reason that we have 4 vending machines in the office. So that's one real nice mechanic that they got working for them in Battlefield 6. That's something that you just can't not be thinking about for a long time. And it's sort of, I think it's beneficial because it's sort of a punishment in a way only for players who have been alive for a long time. So that kind of keeps the balance alive, right? So if you're dying constantly, you're not going to be punished by this chilling mechanic because it's not going to kick in until you've been alive long enough, 30, 45 seconds, maybe longer. And that makes it nice. So you have a little bit of breathing room. But if you have been alive for quite a bit of time, which I don't mean to brag, but recently I've been doing okay. I've been doing moderately decent at the game. And I've been staying alive for a decent amount of time. And that means I have to endure the cold, but it's okay because it's sort of a sign that is saying like, hey, you got some decent survival skills. And here's a little jab, a little fun stab in the rib area just to be like, hey, you're doing good, but also, stay on your toes. So I kind of like that. It's balanced out there for newer players, veterans versus noobs. peeps who are not having the round of their life, I think it's pretty well balanced, and I like that. But there's plenty of other games that do cold mechanics really well, or just in general. I don't think it's not that difficult to do cold mechanics right, because it's super simple, and that's another part of the appeal. It's so simple. Everyone, for the most part, can understand cold. You can understand cold as an entity, right? It freezes you up. Your joints, you're a little more stiff. You can't move as freely. You're all huddled together. You're breathing. You can see your breath. And you're just like, at least if you're in a cartoon, that's what you would do, and that's all well and good. But the other thing that I think is beneficial to adding a cold chill is just that visceral element is much more vibrant with cold versus heat. At least personally, if I see you're in a video game and they're trying to emulate that it's really warm, it's kind of hard to feel it. And what they do a lot of the time, I think one of the examples that springs to my mind is Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. You would have this level where he's out in the desert, he's seeing mirages, and it's got that heat wave traveling over the sand. You get that, yeah, and he's sweaty and he's raising his arm to block the sun. He's like, "Oh goodness, why did I bring down the plane and grab onto the cargo as it was falling off, and then use a parachute?" I don't remember what he was doing on that plane, but I remember the crashing sequence because it was awesome. But I don't necessarily feel the heat, right? That literal heat. But on the opposite spectrum, same spectrum, opposite side, right? Yeah, it's like a circle, and then you're over there. Some people think of a spectrum as a line. It's not a line. It's more of a circle, maybe a 3D, a sphere. Yeah, it's a sphere. And you could be in the center, or you could be to the left, or to the right, or to the front, or to the back, or to the diagonal. There's a lot of different ways you could go, a lot of different directions. There's so many variations. So if we were on a sphere, we would be, you've got the front of the Magic 8 Ball where it gives you the little window to the soul of the 8 Ball. We would be on the opposite side where it's sort of flattened out a little bit, and that's where we are. Or maybe where they put the trademark copyright symbol is stamped in, that's where we are. So on this side of the Magic 8 Ball, we have cold. And for some reason, cold is just much easier for me to feel it, more or less. It's not psychosomatic necessarily, but when I see the vignette coming in around the edges of the screen where it's that frost, oh, I feel that. I feel it with my eyes. My eyes get all squinty. And when the chill of the wind seeping through, so if you're in a game like The Long Dark and you're hearing the whistling wind of the winter winds just slicing through the cabin or wherever you are, I feel it right away. There's something about it. It's just much more strong than heat. And maybe that's just independent to me. I don't know what it is. I like my snowboarding. I like my winter sports. I like going out. In theory, winter sports. It's been a long time, but listen, I've used a snowboard before. I don't want you. You probably think I don't know how to snowboard, and I've never snowboarded it before. I didn't grow up snowboarding. Okay, I wasn't exactly raised on a snowboard, but I've done it. Okay, I even have a snowboard. It's not mine technically. I'm borrowing it from someone. It's sort of a long-term borrow because they haven't asked for it back yet, and I don't think they've used it in like 7 years. But I have a snowboard in my possession that I've used, and I know how to use it. I don't know why you're being so just forthright and you're just on the offensive. I know how to snowboard, okay? And that's it. That's that. All right, I think it's time for a word from today's sponsor. What's better than ice cream? That's right, frozen ice cream. We've taken everything that everyone loves about ice cream and we've made it even better. We did some, some surveys here and there. We asked upwards of 6 people, and they all said the best part of ice cream is that it's cold. So what did we do? We made it even colder. Frozen ice cream is somewhere around 2.5 times colder than standard ice cream. And this ice cream is great because it increases the anticipation that you would get from the ice cream. Now, a normal carton of ice cream, you scoop it out, you put it in a bowl, and you have to wait a little tiny stretch of time before you can eat it, before it starts dissolving and whatnot. This ice cream, you can't even scoop it until it's thawed for 4 hours. All right, this is what we're talking about. It's basically a block of ice. And this increases the anticipation tenfold because you can't even get to it. You don't even know what flavor it is because it's basically covered in a thick coating of ice. And speaking of flavor, the only flavor we've got to work so far is Panda Paws, which we think is pretty popular, but, we're working on some other ones. So it's just Panda Paws for now. But frozen ice cream, it's the future. I know that a lot of ice cream brands in the past have said that they know what the future of ice cream is. They don't know nothing. We know exactly about the frozen future, and it's frozen ice cream. So get your frozen ice cream today. You got a lot of time, so get it. I would say it might be helpful to get it a couple days before you want it, So you get it and you put it in the freezer or just throw it in the fridge, let it thaw in the fridge for a while because it takes some time. I softened the blow with saying 4 hours. That might have been a little confident, a little premature. So 4 hours is unlikely. It's probably double digits. So yeah, get your frozen ice cream as soon as you can because it's going to take a while before you can consume it. And also a word of warning, once you do try to eat it, it's, how should I put this? It's an unconventional texture. I'll just say that, and I'll leave it there. So get your frozen ice cream today, and that's it. That's all you need to do. Thank you. So, one of the most famous representations of coldness in a video game is the Long Dark, at least if you ask me. And that's what this whole podcast is about, asking me questions from myself to myself. So, the Long Dark, you're pretty much just in a frozen winter wonderland the whole time. And I love it. And I'll tell you why I love it. Oftentimes, you just want to go outside. That's what open world is all about. You have these indoor levels or indoor areas, but there's not a whole lot of interest in that when you know that you could step outside into this big old landscape where you got so many options of things to do. So you look at something like Grand Theft Auto 5. How often are you indoors? Not all that often. You'll be indoors when you're at your pad and you're just swapping your outfit or looking at the cars in your garage. But unless you're in a mission, you're probably going to be outside. You're going to be driving around. You're going to be up in the air. You're going to be flying all over. You're going to be doing some sightseeing. You're going to be riding a jet ski, all these different things. But you're not going to be inside all that often. The Long Dark sort of flips that, and they make it so you're only safe indoors. And I like that. And it's not that I'm agoraphobic or anything, but there's something just very warming, very calming about having that safe haven that is a sort of a smaller little area. So I sort of go back in the memory banks to back in the day when I would make forts. So, like, this is like 4 or 5 months ago. So, when I would make forts, I would find all the different entities around, all different materials, and I would try to make something that was a good size where you could have sort of like three separate areas. You'd have your sleeping area, you'd have the common area, and then you'd have your workstation. And the workstation would be just a place where I would put a laptop that has, it's not great, but it's a laptop. You can use it for things. You can open the file explorer and look at pictures of geese, and that's all you really want with a laptop, I assume. And there's this quota for building any type of fort where you don't want it to collapse in on itself, of course. And in order to do that, you kind of have to engineer the roof to be real secure. Because if you just have couch cushions on the sides and then you throw a blanket over the top, well, now you've got a lot of weight in the center, and it's just going to bring everything into the middle. It's going to turn into a teepee, and it's just going to get crushed, and then no one's going to find you ever. And what I like to do is I like to find some things that are a little taller and put those in the center, so I have like two core areas, and that could be a lampstand that no one cares about, or it can be, this was real common, a blanket stand, one of those things where you can throw a blanket, you can tuck in the blankets and it gets rolled around. It's usually made out of wood. That's a real good one because it's already made for blankets, and it's perfect. That's usually what you're using for the roof anyway, is blankets. Or maybe you're using cushions if you happen to have a lot of gigantic ones, but that's not usually the case. Or maybe an entire queen-size mattress. I don't know. But having those things in the center, it sort of makes it like a circus tent where you have that support and it allows it to drape off onto the sides, but you're never worrying about it collapsing. And that's super nice. And what I like to do is you gotta have some areas where the walls are a little stronger, and then areas where it's sort of a clear doorway or window, like a window where you just lift up the blanket, and there you go. You can peer outside, and you're looking at. And here's another thing to bring it back to the conversation. If you got winter times happening in the outside world, and you've got a fort, and you're close to an actual window, then you lift up the blanket and you see the window and you see the winter times, then it makes it so much more cozy on the innards, on the inwards, on the inside of the fort. So when I'm designing a fort, something I like to do is try to keep a bit of balance whenever possible. So if I have couch cushions for one couch and it's like I got 3 of them, well, that's not going to be enough. I want this to be a 3-bedroom. So what am I going to do? I got to find some cushions or pillows or something, some type of support from somewhere else. And that's not going to lead you to a very balanced construction, a very balanced structure all over. So what I'll do is I'll take the cushions and I'll say, all right, I got 3 of them. So I'm going to put one on the left wall, one on the right wall, one on the rear wall. And then I'll fill in the gaps with other pillows and such. And then I have the pillar in the very center. And then I get a real gigantic blanket, which I always have. I never go very long in my life without having a gigantic blanket. I feel, this is just me, I feel like if you don't have a blanket that can completely cover you as well as a dog or 2, you're not, I'm sorry, you're just not prepared for anything. You're not prepared for the end times, and you always have to be prepared for the chilly end times. So I want to say three blankets that can easily cover me and 2 other medium-sized animals. and that's real nice. So I have those, and I usually only need one, but maybe I'll have two, and I'll put them sideways to make up the roof for the fort. And the inside of the fort, you can't ignore that. That's something that I feel like it gets left to the wayside. Everyone's thinking about the outside structure. How are we going to make sure it doesn't collapse in on itself? Well, what about the inside? Because that's where you're spending all your time, right? That's where all the activity is going down. So what are you doing on the inside? So I like to prep by having some type of cushion type area. Obviously, if you're on a carpet, that makes it easier. But I like to go a little further. So Flower and I, Flower is my beloved, we have this nice, I think it's a twin-sized mattress, but it's mobile. So you can fold it out and put it in the back of a car if you got a big trunk or a big back size, like a SUV. Plenty of room in the back for that. So this thing, we don't use it very often. So it's perfect for forts. You take it and you fold it out, and then you have this area that's perfect for the sleeping area. And then the other area, you don't have to really worry about it. Maybe a pillow or something, but you don't really have to think about it. If it's your workstation, you don't need to be that comfortable. As long as you have one area that's super comfy, you're good to go. Uh, Sorry, I had 2 baked potatoes and also 1 strawberry. One thing I like when you're making the sort of the theme, the design of your fort, is having something that you wouldn't ordinarily have on the walls. And this is difficult sometimes because you don't want to get like a paper clip or something or a pin and stab through the blanket. You don't want to do that. But if you can have something just leaning up against the wall, leaning up against the cushion and whatnot on the inside, then that makes it kind of nice because the walls are a forgotten area. But so what I'll do sometimes is I'll get something that doesn't usually go on the wall, and I'll put that on the wall. So maybe a drum set. I'll just hold that at a 90-degree angle, put that on the wall on the inside of the fort. If you got cereal boxes, you can put cereal boxes on the inside of the wall. Goodness, there's so many options. There's this flower light that we have that is like a flower. It's like the shape of a flower and it's neon. You put that on the inside of a fort and you flip the switch. Oh, my goodness, the vibes. They're crazy. Lights in general. You got to grab some lights and throw them in there. If you're in a room that's going to be darkened by the blanket, you got to have lights on the inside. And my goodness, what an atmosphere gets created when you put a light on the inside, especially a colored light, not just white or off-white, not just somewhere between 3200K and 5600K. You want something that's got a little personality to it. Yeah. You got to think about the color of the blanket as well. Mm-hmm. The blanket and the cushions, because if you're saying I want a blue light and the cushions are already blue, well, then it's just a hat on a hat. But I guess that's all right. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. But if you got like a dark color, but then you want to have a real light orange, then that'll be nice. That'll warm it up and that'll have a nice little contrast to it. There's a lot of great things you could do, but I would definitely recommend having snacks because you don't want to be going in and out of the fort all the time. You want to give yourself plenty of time inside the fort because it's special in there. You know that it's temporary. You know that you're not going to be there forever. So you need to make sure that your time there is well spent. And what better way to spend time than by eating snacks? I rest my case. So, in the long dark, when you're walking around and it's all dark and you've been walking for a long time, something that happens is that you get super cold. Wow, big surprise. No way, Dirt. Yeah, you get cold. But there's a lot of different ways to warm up. You got your torches. You got your campfires. You got, of course, barrels where you can light them on fire. And then you can go indoors. You can go indoors, and it's usually going to be warmer. But then there's some places, like there's cabins that have been, abandoned for a long time, and the weather and the elements are taking it apart piece by piece, and it's not all that warm. So you gotta light a fire on the inside there. And there's a lot of different ways that you want to be getting warm. And you think about a game like Don't Starve Together, where you got to gather the resources and you got to get the fire, make sure it doesn't go out before you need it to go out, because it's not so much for the cold, it's for the night times, for the darkness. But all these things, they bring attention to something so basic. It's just survival instincts. That's all it is. And that comes back to my enjoyment of survival games. A lot of the time, I think we get real tired of the basic survival game loop and routine, chopping down a tree, gathering plant fibers, gathering rocks, and making some bare bones stuff. And it's like, then what? What's the point? Is that the whole point? Yes, sometimes that's the whole point. And that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes we're just going back to basics, and we're appealing to that side of our sort of primitive. It's a primitive feeling that you're evoking. And it's really nice. And what it does is it makes you value what you have. Sorry, I had 2 very large baked potatoes and 1 strawberry. It makes you value whatever you have. So if you got a roof over your head, my goodness, these cold games especially, they make you really value having shelter from the elements. And the cold, the wind, the freezing cold, the chilly cold, the not warm coldness, all these things. They make you very much value having warmth and having the bare necessities. That's what survival games are all about, and that's what the cold levels are all about. In something like No Man's Sky, if you pop up on a planet that's super cold, chances are I'm just going to leave immediately. But if you stay, you'll probably need to dig out a little cave for yourself to protect yourself, especially if there's an extreme storm where it's excruciatingly cold. You gotta be protected. And that makes those precious moments above the surface when it's super cold, they make that real special. Because if everything is just on an even keel, everything is up for grabs. If you're in space and you can breathe endlessly, and if you're on land and nothing can ever hurt you, then what's the point? You need conflict. You need reasons to feel that tension. You need things to feel special, and things are not going to feel special if everything is super easy all the time. I think that's what it comes down to. All right, it's time for today's lucky color. Today's lucky color is mulberry. It's an interesting muted pink-purple mulberry. The hex code is C54B8C. C54B8C. It's one of the tougher ones to say because you got B8 and then a couple of those rhymed, I think. So it's a weird one. So make sure you type that in right if you're using it for your graphic design needs. Look out for mulberry, everybody. Look out for mulberry. Now, before you leave, I gotta put this in your mind. If we have an animal name for the mouse, on the computer, it's a mice over here. What about the keyboard? I feel like the keyboard should have an animal name. What would we call it if it was a keyboard, like a zebra or an alligator? I think alligator makes sense. Just looking at their back, it sort of looks like buttons, right? I think I'm going to go with an alligator. Alligator and mouse. Of course, alligator would probably eat the mouse unless they formed a real cute bond like you would see in an early Disney's animation. None of the new ones. The new Disney stuff is just the old Disney stuff, but it's a newer version of the new version. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your keyboard and mouse going out into the real world. All right, stay warm, everyone. Ha 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 ha. Bye.